Hello everyone, welcome back to English 1. I'm Sophie Lee. Today we are going to talk about Unit 11, doing placement at historic royal palaces. We have the pleasure to have Wei Ting with us today. Wei Ting, please say hello to the audience.
Hi, my name is Wei Ting. I studied museum studies at the University of Leicester. It's my pleasure to be here.
Normally we don't know much about the dedication of British Museum to human history, art, and culture. Today, we are going to learn something about British museums, in particular, the historic royal palaces. We are having Wei Ting to share with us her personal experience of working at a museum.
Yes, I did my placement at the historic royal palaces. I'm sure a working log is worth all information. This unit is written based on my placement experience.
Thank you. 是的，通常我们不清楚英国博物馆对人类的贡献。今天我们要来讨论一下。Unit 11 is talking about a working log of a postgraduate student who studies at the University of Leicester and did her placement as part of her study. A working log is a diary to record things that are done or have to be done, and in what ways are they to be done. Log 呢是记载所发生的事情、该做的事和事件的一些发生的过程。Wei Ting, please explain, read the following passage.
Log, for example, sailor's log, nautical log, ship's article.
是的，水手日志、航海日志，或是在有些小说里面也会将 nautical log 呢称为 ship's article. The first paragraph talks a little bit about the background of the historic royal palaces. Before Wei Ting reads the first paragraph, let's take a look at the differences between historic and historical. 我们来看看这两个字的差别。Wei Ting, could you please read the following passage for us?
Historical. Historical fictions are novels that recreate a setting, a period, or event in history, and often use events in the past. For example, The Book Thief, A Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and Gone with the Wind. With historical novels, readers can fill a time period and connect the struggles of the past to the present. History textbooks don't help readers make personal connections with the past. People admit wrongdoings through reading historical fiction. For example, native peoples, slavery, racism. Reading historical novels helps to alleviate our sense of guilt. Historical novels used to educate and teach children. The best education we can get is from our own social culture. Historic. Historic is usually for important and famous moments in history, such as a historic battle. For example, Battle of Waterloo is a historic battle. A historic building is generally considered to be a building or structure that has some kind of historic value.
Thanks, Wei Ting. What's the difference between historical and historic? 这两个字有什么差别呢？ Historical is used for describing history, such as historical novels. Historical 用在解释和历史相关的事物，例如历史小说中的背景、故事场景和事件都一定是类似过去曾经发生的事情，但是不一定是真有此事或是确有其人。借助这个历史小说，读者们也可以感受到那一段时空，并将过去的一些斗争跟现在的斗争呢联系起来。历史的教科书呢，无法帮助读者和过去建立个人的一种关系。人们通常透过历史小说的阅读来承认古人不当的行为，比如说原住民或是土著，或是奴隶制，还有种族主义。阅读历史小说有助于减轻内疚感。我们用历史小说来教育孩子。换句话说，最好的教育来自于我们自己的文化。历史小说重新创造了历史的背景、时期或是事件，并经常用过去的事件，比如说《The Book Thief, The Boys in the Striped Pajamas, and Gone with the Wind. 那 historic is usually for important and famous moments in history, such as historic battle. 这个 historic 用来说明具有历史性、有历史价值的事物，例如 Battles of Waterloo is a historic battle. 滑铁卢战役是一场历史的战役。A historic building is generally considered to be a building or structure that has some kinds of historic value. 具有历史性的建筑物，一般而言是指建筑物或是结构具有历史的价值。Wei Ting, please read and explain the first paragraph for us.
This is a working log of a postgraduate student, Wei Ting, who studied at University of Leicester and did her placement in collection management team at the Historic Royal Palaces. The Historic Royal Palaces, HRP, is an independent charity organization. HRP is in charge of 6 palaces, including the Hampton Court Palace, Tower of London, the Banqueting House, Kensington Palace, Kew Palace, and Hillsborough Castle on behalf of the Queen. It is dedicated to showcasing some of the greatest palaces ever built, conserving them for future generations and bringing their stories to life. The HRP appeals to many visitors because of the uniqueness of wide range of collections, mostly related to the history of the Great Britain.
谢谢。OK，我们先看看这个句子。An independent charity organization is not affiliated with a national, regional, or geographic grouping of organizations. 好，这个主词呢是 an independent charity organization。那动词呢是 is。OK， 那 affiliate 呢，我们接下来会解释。这个单元在谈研究生魏婷的工作日志。他在就读 Leicester 大学硕士课程的学习期间，在经过甄选后被挑选，安置在历史悠久的皇家宫殿的收藏管理团队中。这个皇家历史宫殿 HRP 是一个独立的慈善组织 ，an independent charity organization is not affiliated with a national, regional or geographic grouping of organizations. 这个慈善机构呢是不附属在任何的国家、地区或是地域性的组织的。Affiliated 是附属的意思，这个字很重要，也很常用。例如师大附中，我们就用 Affiliated Senior High School of National Taiwan Normal University. 师大附中是师大的附属中学 ，Affiliated Senior High School. Okay. Next, let's take a look at the following passage. HRP is in charge of 6 palaces on behalf of the Queen. On behalf of 的意思就是代表英国女王。On behalf of HRP 代表英国女王负责的，包括汉普顿宫、伦敦铁塔等的6座宫殿城堡。Be in charge of 是负责的意思。On behalf of 代表英国女王。如果不看这个句子中的 including the Hampton Court Palace, Tower of London, the Banqueting House, Kensington Palace, Kew Palace, and Hillsborough Castle, 这个句子就可以看得更清楚。HRP is in charge of 6 palaces on behalf of the Queen. HRP 呢代表的是英国女王负责的这6座宫殿。Wei Ting, please read the following passage.
Job description for the placement at historic royal palaces includes an archaeology cataloging project. The first 2 weeks, Wei Ting learned how to operate CMS, Collection Management System, and became familiar with the sites. The basic trainings at Collection Management Team include learning the fundamental knowledge of collection care, preventive conservation, and collection repair. Besides the basic trainings, she also did the book audits with the preventive conservation team. Conducting book audits involves cleaning the books, updating condition report, stain, loose binding, cracks, past, etc. Taking photos and then putting the books back on display. In order to make sure the items are in place, either on specific display spot, in storage, or on loan, a spot check is performed to locate a small amount of randomly picked objects from the whole collection.
Thank you, Wei Ting. It seems a lot of work to be done during the placement program. 我们来看看第二段的第一个句子。同学们不要担心长的句子哦，通常长的句子只要找到主词、动词和受词就很容易懂。这句话的主词是 job description for the placement at historic royal palaces， 动词是 include， 后面的 an archaeology cataloging project 是受词。这个实习的工作内容包括考古编目项目。开始的前2周，魏婷学会藏品管理系统的操作 CMS。Collection Management System, and became familiar with this site， 并熟悉那6座的宫殿。这个馆藏管理团队的基本培训包括学习馆藏修护、预防性保护和馆藏修复的基础知识。我们请魏婷老师帮我们再念一次。魏婷 ，please.
The basic trainings at collection management team, including learning the fundamental knowledge of collection care, preventive conservation, and collection repair.
Thank you. 馆藏管理团队的基本培训包括学习馆藏修护、预防性保护和馆藏修护的基本知识。接下来呢，我们来看看除了基本培训，魏婷还需要做些什么工作 ？Besides the basic trainings, she also did the book audits with the preventive conservation team。除了基础的培训，她还需要和预防性保护小组进行了书籍的审核。Book audits 是什么样的概念呢？我们请魏婷老师帮我们解释 book audits。魏婷 ，please。
Conducting book audits involves cleaning the books, updating condition report, stain, loose binding, cracks, past, etc. Taking photos and then putting the books back on display. In order to make sure the items are in place, either on specific display spot, in storage, or on loan, a spot check is performed to locate a small amount of randomly picked objects from the whole collection.
Thank you. 有一些动词呢，它后面呢会需要加动名词啊，比如说 to involve。后面我们会加动名词，还有动词像 forget、like、mean、recall 或是 remember、avoid 这些动词呢，我们后面都会加动名词。魏婷 ，please read the following example sentence.
I like working on my computer. She remembered having lunch with my sisters. He locked the door to avoid being disturbed.
OK， 刚刚魏婷老师念的那一个句子呢？ Conducting book audits， 那个整个句子呢是 conducting book audits 当主词 ，involve 它的动词是 involves 这个动词很有趣，它和主词所要进行的动作过程有逻辑性的关联。比如说进行书籍审核，包括这些实习生必须要做的清洁书籍、更新藏品的状况报告等这些事项。involve 后面加动名词，后面有好几个动词。 Cleaning, updating, and taking photos. OK， 好，我们再看看这个例句。I like working on my computer. 我喜欢在电脑上工作。She remembers having lunch with my sisters. 她记得和我的妹妹们共进过午餐。He locked the doors to avoid being disturbed. 他锁好门以避免被打搅。OK， 课文的这句话的意思是说。 进行书籍审核，包括清洁书籍、更新藏品的状况报告，例如污点、固定松动液的这些装订，还有裂缝啊、虫害等这种事项。那拍照，并且他还要随后将书籍放回展示台上，为了确保物品放置在适当的位置，例如在特定的展示位置、储藏间，或是掌握物品。 由哪里借出去的这些位置，小组会进行物品是否归位的抽查，随机挑选少量的物件，看是否能够从整个收藏品中找到。 我们来看看几个介系词和名词当形容词的用法。魏婷 ，please。
On loan.
贷款，
In place.
就是在适当的位置。
In process.
加工过程中或生产中的。
In progress.
进行中。
In storage.
储藏。
On display.
展出。
On air.
电视或广播播音。Okay, before we carry on, Wei Ting, what is the answer to the following questions?
Which of the following is not a sign of past activity? A. Rats. B. Mold. C. Fungi. D. Mildew. The answer is A.
是的，以上的答案呢，只有 A 不是昆虫，霉菌或是真菌啊，霉菌，另外一个面包上的一种特有的霉菌 mildew。Right， 第3段呢，谈到如何处理博物馆收回来的藏品。魏婷 ，please read the paragraph for us.
After the loaned collections returned from Australia, for example, crescent robe worn by King George IV, Wei Ting was involved with the returning process. When the loaned items were moved back to temporary storage, a simple condition check was conducted, and the checked items were wrapped for isolation and further treatment. The reason for the isolation was to monitor if there was a sign of past activity: insects, mold, fungi, and mildew. Later, the isolation results decide what treatments to be applied to the items.
Thank you, Wei Ting. Now, let's take a look at some past participles in the paragraphs first. 我们会用 past participle 过去分词来当做形容词，比如说 loaned collections, checked items, stolen goods, crescent sites. 那这段话呢，谈到由博物馆借出的藏品从澳大利亚归还后，例如那个乔治4世国王穿过的洗礼袍，魏婷参与了归还的过程，将回来的藏品移回到临时的仓库后，小组呢会进行了简单的状况检查，并将所检查的物品包裹起来，以进行隔离和进一步的处理。隔离的原因是因为要检视藏品是否有害的生物活动迹象，比如说昆虫啦、霉菌、真菌和面粉的一些霉菌。之后呢，根据隔离的结果，再决定处理的方式。这里的 mold、fungi and mildew 是霉菌、真菌和常在面粉中出现的一种霉菌 mildew。Let's take a look at the word isolation.Isolation 有隔离、孤立和脱离的意思。There are different kinds of isolation。这里呢，我们来谈谈几种不同的隔离。例如说，Robinson Crusoe kind of isolation，Anne Frank kind of isolation，COVID-19 kind of isolation。还有像当年翁山书记居家逮捕的那种 house arrest kind of isolation。我们请魏婷老师解释。
Isolation.
隔离、孤立、脱离。
Insulation.
隔热、隔音、绝缘。
Segregation. Synonyms for segregation, such as aloneness, insulation, isolation, privacy, seclusion, separateness, solitariness, solitude.
这些字呢都有隔离、孤独的意思。
Quarantine.
检疫隔离。
Apartheid.
种族隔离。Thank you， 魏婷。我们来看第4段。第4段在谈实习工作时所指派的任务，怎么样提供实习生观察和参观大型机构日常所做的工作细项的机会。魏婷 ，please read the last paragraph.
As for the archaeology project,Wei Ting needed to repack, photograph, measure, and catalog 15 boxes of archaeology items discovered from the excavation sites at the Hampton Court Palace, and wrote a full report about it. Before carrying out the project, the team discussed how they were to conduct the project, such as setting up a working line, prioritizing tasks, etc. After the projects, she learned how to number, photograph, pack, and catalog archaeology items, and to pack them according to either excavation context or materials. These assigned tasks offer Wei-Ting opportunities to observe and take part in a large organization's daily routine. HRP, Historic Royal Palaces, has strict guidelines to make sure every individual involved, staffs, interns, or volunteers, is doing their job at a mandatory standard.
Thank you. Prepositions are tricky. What as for means in this passage? Okay, is there any word to replace as for? Can we use about? Can we use in order to? 这里的 as for 呢，我们有 about 或 in order to 的意思。Okay, right. To do the job, Wei-Ting needed to repack, photograph, measure, and catalog 15 boxes of archaeology items discovered from the 这里课文里面写到 crescent site， 其实应该是 excavation site。OK， 为了做这个考古计划呢，Wei-Ting需要重新包装、拍照、测量并分类从汉普顿宫的洗礼场发现的这15箱的考古物品，然后他要撰写一份完整的报告。接下来我们来看下一个句子。Wei-Ting, please read the next paragraph.
Before carrying out the project, the team discussed how they were to conduct the project, such as setting up a working line, prioritizing tasks, etc. After the project, she learned how to number, photograph, pack, and catalog archaeology items, and to pack them according to either excavation context or materials.
在执行计划之前，小组讨论如何着手进行，例如建立工作内容、确定任务的优先顺序等。A working line 就是工作进度表的意思。People normally procrastinate and put off things till the last minute. Even Bill Gates, in his interview, talks about how bad procrastination is. A working line is probably helpful to get things done on schedule. 人们通常呢会拖延事情，直到最后一刻才动手做。那甚至呢 ，Bill Gates 在接受采访的时候，他也谈到说，拖延其实是一个非常糟糕的一个习惯。有了工作进度表，就会帮助工作人员呢按时的完成任务。我们接着来看下一句，在计划完成后。他学习如何对考古物品进行编号、拍照、包装和分类，并根据挖掘土层的环境或材料来进行包装。Wei-Ting, please tell us what does excavation context mean?
According to Wikipedia, excavation is exposure, processing, and recording of archaeological remains. An excavation site, or dig, is the area being studied. These locations range from one to several areas at a time during a project and can be conducted over a few weeks to several years. Excavation involves the recovery of several types of data from a site. This data includes artifacts, features, ecofacts, evidence of human activity through organic remains such as animal bones, pollen, or charcoal, and archaeological context.
Thank you, Wei-Ting. 是的，根据维基百科呢，挖掘是考古学上探索古代遗物过程的一个处理和记录。挖掘现场呢是正在研究的考古区域。在挖掘项目的期间呢，这些挖掘现场从一个到几个区域不等。挖掘考古的时间呢，可以进行数周到数年这么长哦。挖掘并发现古文物的资料。这些数据包括古文物、古迹特征、生态事实，通过有机残留物 例如动物的骨骼、花粉或木炭，进行古人类活动的证据，它来参考它的考古环境。我们来看最后一个句子，魏婷 ，please。
Lee's assigned task offered Wei-Ting opportunities to observe and take part in a large organization's daily routine. HRP, Historic Royal Palaces, has strict guidelines to make sure every individual involved, staffs, interns, or volunteers, is doing their job at a mandatory standard.
这些指派的任务提供了魏婷观察和参与一个大型机构日常所做的工作的机会。HRP 皇家历史宫殿有严格的指导原则，以确保每一个参与人员，例如员工、实习生或志愿者，他确保每一个参与人员呢都按照所规定的标准来做事。我们来看看以下的介系词片语。魏婷 ，please read the following prepositional phrases.
At a high speed,
高速、
at a high rate,
高比例、
at any cost,
不计代价、
at a mandatory standard,
法定标准、
at your dispose.
任你差遣、随你处置。我们请魏婷老师帮我们念单字和例句。
Showcase. Sogo Department Store is showcasing its Christmas special. Appeal. Hello Kitty appeals to many children. These subjects have lost their appeal for most students. Uniqueness. The job of parenting is the job of appreciating the uniqueness of individual children. Archaeology. Henry is very interested in history and archaeology and often visits historic sites. Audit. My uncle's company has an audit at the end of each financial year. Binding. The binding of a book is the type of cover it has. Stain. Henry has got an ink stain on his shirt. Cracks. There are many cracks on the old wall. Past. Surprisingly, the severe frost killed off most of the insect pests. Randomly. The gunman began firing randomly into the crowd. Christen. British people have their Christian names given to them when they were born or when they were christened. Fungi. Mushrooms, toadstools, and mildew are all fungi. Prioritize. It is very important to prioritize things on your timetable. Individual. The museum receives donations from private individuals. Mandatory. In many countries, it is mandatory for a young man aged 18 to enlist in the army.
今天非常感谢魏婷帮我们助讲第11个单元，我们下次见。